Hello and welcome to my craft table. Today I am making a junk journal out of some old Christmassy themed 12 by 12 papers that got from an estate sale. I am using some 80 point chipboard, so it's kind of on the thick side. I'm using a total of four inserts for signatures. Each in signature is, oh goodness, I believe it is 8 pages long. There is a longer side and a shorter side. I'm just going to kind of quickly show you through the steps that I made here on my junk journal. I do use the spacer tool, which I got off of Amazon. I'll link all of these items below for you in the description. I used a ton of glue of my Fabri-Fix glue to make sure it's nice and secured down. And then I take my silicone brush and I kind of make sure that I push it all down just to make sure it's well covered and it's all the way to the edges. I put a little bit more in there. My craft room is a little on the warm side, so I felt like the glue was drying up really quickly by the time I got it all spread out. But I went ahead and I set each piece of this and used that spacer to help line it up just to make sure it was done correctly. I am now moving on to punching the signatures and also the insert, which I'm using another piece of thick cardstock that I have, and I use that Crop-A-Dile too. It's a great tool. If you don't have it, it is one of my highly recommended newer tools to my craft room. I love that thing. I am just picking out some waxed thread and cutting the string, getting ready to do my inserts. And I'm doing, of course, 3 times the length because I'm going to do a pamphlet stitch on these, so make it nice and simple. And then I'm also going to be stitching from the outside in, because my goal is once I have all these set to this piece of cardstock, I'm gluing the cardstock to the inside of my book. So it'll be a hidden spine is what my goal is. And I didn't want the ties on the inside of the signatures. So I'm just going through here and attaching. Here's a sample of me doing the one. There's some really great videos out there showing you guys all of these. I'll link to a couple of them that I follow, and I love watching them create all of their different books and their ideas on how to do their binding of their books. There's so many good options. I feel like when it's a junk journal, sometimes I spend a lot of time making it. It took me in total time to make this particular book. I believe it was just over 3 hours and between time that I spent on it. But honestly, it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed myself. I'm using some Tyvek tape to tape down the back side of those strings just to make sure they don't go anywhere. And then I am gluing it down into my book, as you'll see here in just a second. And I'm going to leave this sit overnight, and I am going to use a couple of encyclopedia books to kind of help hold it up in place once I get it glued down. But I am taking my time just to make sure I have it nice and centered there. I don't want to make any mistakes on it, but I am getting everything all trimmed up here and getting it ready to go on the getting it ready to insert the middle of my pages here and just trimming up some of the strings that are loose here. All right, and we're going to glue it down. And when I glue it, I do try to make sure that it is lots of glue again, just like I did for the outside, just to make sure it sticks well and that it's not going to fall out for any reason. I haven't had any problems with it, but just to be on the safe side, I always rather be on the cautious end of it. And when I put it down, I do get it nice and centered, and then I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to go through and make sure to push down inside each of them just to make sure that it's nice and secure as it sits. And I will leave it overnight just to make sure there's plenty of drying time in here, and that way I don't get too tempted to mess with it and play with it more and continue to work on it. But I will leave it overnight and it'll rest. And I will, like I said, prop it up using 2 encyclopedias there just to make sure it stays put. All right, next morning I come out, I check it out. It looks great, and I am ready to do the inside pieces. For the inside, because the pages I end up using, I use more of this gray cardstock, and I'm going to just size it down to the inside. And then I'm going to glue down these pages that basically random pages that I had in a book with all different size items, but I'm just going to trim it up and cut it down to size so it fits perfectly. This cardstock is actually a cardstock that I got at a yard sale. I get a lot of my stuff. I love to find stuff at the yard sales. And this particular one, I had a whole packet of it, and it was a dark gray, and it's made for a presentation cover, is what it's made for. Um, but as you can see here, I'm just trimming down the paper, and I'm going to cut it down into size to fit. I feel like it is a good matching, so it matches up to kind of the theme of the papers I already have. So here I am just trimming it up. I want to make sure that it fits nice in there, and after I glue it down, I will end up making one more adjustment to it, just because I felt like when I got it down and I put it in the inside of my book, I felt like I needed to just trim it up just a little bit more. But I'm just going to glue it down and let it sit, and I'll put it back under those same books that I used before and those encyclopedias, and just make sure to glue it down to make it work well, and so it sticks well to the gray paper. While the inside pages are drying, I'm going to start working on the cover of my book, and I decided to take this stencil and use some permanent inks on it of various colors. And I'm also going to just go through and um, kind of set it on there and just kind of use my blending brush. I'm not intending for it to be super dark colored, but just enough where it gets a shadow of the color is what I'm looking for. Nothing for it to be overly exaggerated, but just enough where it's not just a plain green lid to it. And then I'm going to continue on this and go through multiple colors here, just trying to go through and make it somewhat interesting of a cover. I'll also go move on to the back and the spine as well. So I will continue my way through on this covering. I do end up using some of this wax paste, and it's like a metal wax paste. It's really a lot of fun to use because once it dries, it's permanent. It doesn't come off, and you can usually, it said mixed media is what it said on it, which is what drew my attention to it. But people use it on furniture all the time, and it's just a nice way to add some metallic to my cover, and it just is a nice little bronzy effect. It's by Deco Art, and it's called Metallic Luster. The color I used was an espresso, iced espresso is the name of the one that I used on it from Deco Art. And it's just like a paste, so it's kind of a great way to use it for a metallic wax finish. So I use that just on the front cover, just want to add a little bit of shimmer to it. And now I'm working on the back and the spine of my book, and while I'm again waiting for those inside papers to dry. Once I'm done with the cover, I do end up distressing the edges just to give it a little bit more of a finished look as well. And then from here, I do add some fixative just to make sure nothing goes, and gets sideways. All right, once that is done, I then work on getting the inside of both front and back done. And this is where I'm going to be trimming it down just a little bit more, just because I noticed it was just a little too tight and there wasn't enough room around there. So here I am just trimming it up. Like I said, just want to make sure that it goes and gets in there well on both sides. And this is kind of like the final kind of pieces, and I will glue it down again with the Fabri-Fix on here also. And I'm just trimming up the edge. After I trimmed it, I noticed one end was a little on the loose side, so I added a little bit more glue to it just to make sure it was tight on there without any problems. Here I am just setting in the inside of the page, and I'm going to glue it down. Again, doing the same thing I basically did for the fabric, is putting lots of the glue down using the silicone, basically silicone paintbrush to spread around that glue, and then I'm setting it into the book. And then what I do is I do leave it again sitting with those dictionaries, as I end up sitting it down with the dictionaries on top of it just to hold it in place. So that way I know it's not going to go anywhere and it'll dry with some weight on it. I end up leaving it again one more night. So I did this over a 3-day project. You could accomplish it probably all in one day. I didn't have a full time frame. I just had to cut my hour here, hour there to work on it over a couple of days. So I went ahead and I left it sitting and I put a few books on it just to make it nice and heavy. And then here is the final product as to what it was all said and done. So again, I have some short pages, some big pages. It is overall, it's an 8.5 by 11 size book for me. It's just again going to be a junk journal. I just plan to use it and fill up the pages. I wasn't too concerned about the pages and the colors on the inside. I will be collaging over a lot of it between old papers and different things. Just some collaging of, I have some cut and collage books I plan to use up, and any of the colors I don't like. I have plenty of white pages, so I have plenty to keep me occupied in filling up this book, which I look forward to. Thank you so much for following along and watching my video on making this junk journal. Please continue to follow and watch me fill up this junk journal.